My name is Michael Williams. I used to work for Much Music. I think I'm one of the record holders, if not the record holders, in terms of years that I was on the air there. Much Music, City TV, and I was also on Chum FM. Before that, I had a rather interesting life as well. But Much Music is what the film is about, and I'm on this podcast, and that's Gregg, and that's Karim, and it's called Welcome to the Music with Gregg and Karim. My name is Michael Williams. Welcome to the show.
Right on.
Perfect. Michael, welcome. It's an honor to have you on with us. The first question I have to ask is talk about your Much Music days and we ask this of anybody who has a mutual friend with us, with this person, or who has a mutual friend with us, this person. Do you have any juice on Erica M that we can hold over her at any point?
Okay, some juice over Erica M. Well, I do, but that's going to be in the book. Okay.
Okay.
So,
then we'll wait for the book.
I have some really good juice about the first time that we met, because she doesn't remember the first time that we actually met. And we both worked at the same radio station in Montreal, Chum FM. And I'm from Montreal. She's from Montreal. I never knew her before I came to Toronto. And I met her here. And when I came into Much Music, when I came into City TV on the whichever floor at 99 Queen Street East, where they started out at the original City TV building, she was behind the desk and she was working in booking talent. And that's where I sort of met her face to face for the very first time. But we did meet over the phone. And you know, so there you go. That's as much as I can give you. Okay.
That's cool.
It's a little something there, yeah. But
all right. We will wait for the book. And coincidentally, and I have busted her on this a few times. She also doesn't remember the first time she and I met, which was back at might have been the Diamond. I don't know if it was the Phoenix at the time. It was the Rock Express or Music Express Awards. We were there. The Tragically Hip had just played. We were also being managed by Jake Gold at the time. And she came up, and Jeff had like flowing long brown hair. And she thought that Jeff and I were with the Tragically Hip, and she came up and said how much she loved us and loved the show and everything else that night. And so to this day, I bring it up whenever I can.
Excuse me, do you want me to sign that album too?
That was the next move.
That was the next move, and you know, would you like to come up and hear my demos?
by the way,
yeah. Okay, on to the serious stuff now.
when did Sean approach you about this documentary, and how did he pitch you on why he wanted you, or your thoughts on that?
Erica called me and left me a message saying that this project was going on, and she was working with this fellow, Sean Menard, and that I should get involved in the project. We had all been involved with the project with Steve Anthony, sort of working on a Much Music radio show, similar to what the VJs at MTV did, but a lot late, like way too late. And we worked on it for 7 years, and nothing actually ever came of it, unfortunately, because we all spent a lot of time on it. And I don't know where those archives are, but Steve has them. It was interesting because it was the first time that we were all in the same room together since Much Music. Or since a Much Music party, really, and because that would be the time when we would see each other around the holidays and stuff like that. Other than that, we were on our own shifts. So she called and said, do you want to get involved with this? And I said, no. and I got another call and I said, no. And then I said, okay, well, let me look at it, because it was sort of part of the program, knowing that eventually a documentary would happen. And unless I was going to do it, I would have to participate in someone else's. And I get calls a lot now because everybody's trying to discover the history of Black music and various forms of music. And I get calls by people, and I mostly say, I've said no to most of them because I looked at the scripts. And it was, and like that. There was no script to this, so I said, I guess I need the people. Sean and his producer came out to Starbucks. This was like in the middle of pandemic time, or last year of pandemic time.
Yeah.
So it's a while ago. I guess it's about a year, 2 years now that they approached me on this. So I said, I will meet with you at Starbucks. Went up to my local Starbucks. We're all masked up and everything. And one of the things that Sean says was that, well, starting this, I really didn't know who you were and what you do. And I said, you're not winning me over now, really. Okay. And we went on to talk, and we talked for quite a while. I can be quite exhaustive and quite thorough in my diligence or my due diligence on something that I'm going to do outside of the realm of much music, because there you felt taken care of. You had a whole team that you worked with. You had a system. You had an end goal or an output that you were hoping for. This was kind of like a wild card because, it's a film. It could be great or it could suck. I'm not making it. It could suck. No one that I knew was making it. It could suck. I don't know, there hasn't been any documentaries done on much music, and there hasn't even been the attention really paid to it that I think it deserves in educational institutions and all that stuff, let alone we haven't received our damn Order of Canada yet that we each get a little piece of. I understand Denise Donlin got an Order of Canada, but she didn't offer to split that with us. So I think we have to get our own here. Yeah. And so I'm sitting with him and his producer. Nice fellows. I like them as human beings. They were quite interesting. And his producer knew exactly who I was and exactly what I did. So, but it didn't exactly make up for Sean's lack thereof. And then he said, as the meeting continues, as I begin to research this, your name kept coming up. And I went, oh, really? And I'm going, yeah. And his wife was quite a big fan of mine and had watched a lot of the things and kind of grew, I'm in a fortunate position where at least 3 generations of Canadians have grown up with me and music, 3 to 4 if you include Montreal. So, because I was on Shom FM and CKGM in Montreal, I wrote for the Sunday Express, and I had quite a musical footprint and profile there in Montreal, which I was very happy with. We would only come down to Toronto for the Junos, and then we would always leave as soon as possible because it was Toronto, and we're from Montreal, and we had the Canadians. And when you walk into the Montreal Forum, from one end to the other, there are pennants and stuff like that. So, already I'm in a disadvantage here. And so as the meeting continues, really, really nice guys. And but still I'm still at no. I'm still at no. Yes, because I'm just very careful with what I do after much music, because I don't know. I'm always working with foreign entities. Much music was not. I knew exactly what could happen there, good, bad, or indifferent. And so I was ready for that. I didn't know if I was ready for this. Then he says one thing to me that really protected his commitment and my commitment to what I did and what I do. He said that I put up my house to do this. And I went, now that's rock and roll. I can get behind that because that's what I do with everything I do, man. It's all or nothing. It's all out. And it's, You know, what did Judas Priest say? You got another thing coming? Come on. You know, this was rock and roll at its highest order. And, that kind of commitment is the type of commitment that somebody joins a band for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or writes that one great song for, and stuff like that. What are you going to do? I'm going to put the house and sell the farm, man. And I'm going to do this rock and roll thing or this soul thing or whatever. I'm going to do music, but I believe in it. That told me he believed in it, you know, as much as I did. At that point, I said yes. And, we kind of been, you know, we've been talking about it ever since. He came to my studio. And the other thing about the film too is that there were no new videos or video tracks of us or shooting of our images or anything like that. There was my voice and there was all the stuff that I did for Much Music Days, which I have absolutely no problem with. Or about anything that I did on Much Music, anything. So I was good with that. And I was good with being interviewed and reflecting on that.
Yeah.
And putting myself in the frame of mind of the time that I did those things. I didn't see the clips, but I suggested a few things to him, like my very first day at Much Music, where I introduced I not only interviewed Run DMC, whom I had known, and Rockbox on that very first album was a hit in Montreal because I made it a hit. I played the shit out of it on my show, which was Club 980 CKGM, which was like some 40, 41, 42 years ago. And the first network show, the first real radio show, not college radio, that played hip hop and a variety of music. But definitely we played hip hop, and we also played the hip hop that we were playing was like, you know, this goes back to the days of Wild Style, because I did the premiere of Wild Style in Montreal with Charles Ahern. Great hip hop. The quintessential hip hop film was Wild Style. And so we came out of that era. And great film. If you haven't seen it, see it. If you don't have the soundtrack, get it. Check out Stoop Rap, the Cold Crush Brothers. I mean, it is the genesis. It was the genesis of hip hop film for sure. So I was doing this show called Club 980 / Soul in the City. So Soul in the City was a radio show. It wasn't a television show. It wasn't meant to be a television show, but I made it into a television show. But it started out and everybody here does a couple hours of radio, this, that, and the other. You can listen to as much black music, funk, or soul, or hip hop, between Friday night at midnight and Sunday night at midnight. That was the vibe here in Toronto. In Montreal, we were blasting 24/7 in English and French. And my show was a 6-hour show on Saturday from 6 to midnight. So on Saturdays, I would do the equivalent of, I do about 13 hours of radio every Saturday. I would start at about 10 or 11, and I would go to, I do like a 5-6 hour shift, you know, on Saturday at Shom FM, which is the rock and roll powerhouse of Montreal, but also the nation at one point in time. And I'd be there doing the morning show to the afternoon. I'd get off probably about 4 o'clock. So I'd do about 10 or 11 to 4. I'd go have dinner for an hour across the street. Then I go grab my records in the back, two seal test cartons of records and my 45s, because I've always been a DJ, club and radio. And, since I was a kid, you know, so that takes it back to like 1960 something, you know, 67, 68. And, I would take my records out of my car, put them in the studio, go to the bathroom, come into the studio, and I would spontaneously combust for 6 hours. I wouldn't go in with I go in with a little bit of an idea, but I had just hit the record store on Saturday morning or Friday. I just hit the importer, my buddy Cass, and I would unload his van so I would get brand new records, you know, and I was there with Robert We Met, Michel Kadash, Michel Samard, DJ Mario, all of the DJs in Montreal on Thursday or Friday, we would meet at a place called Pierre Music. Outside of Pierre Music, right around the corner in front of Rock and Stock, my friend Cass, who was the main importer, would pull up his truck so I could get free records because I couldn't afford them. So I could get free records. I would unload his truck and help him organize it so he could sell his product. Then he'd turn around and give me singles. That's how I got a copy of UB40, Food for Thought and Kings, when it was on the 45, when it had just come out, from the album that gave you 1 in 10. I guess it was the debut, UB40. And so that's how I would get my music, but also record companies would give me music. I would buy music from Pure Music. Then I got sponsors for the music and stuff like that. And I would always follow my dear late friend, the greatest Canadian DJ, club DJ ever, from 1977, when he was voted from Billboard magazine the DJ of the year, because he was the one who turned over Just Sit Down and Talk About It and played, the first man in the world to play on 45. He'd take 2 45s and rock the shit out of it. I Feel Love by Donna Summers.
Wow.
He made that a hit. That song is sort of synonymous with Montreal. His name is Robert Ouimet, the great Robert Ouimet, just a wonderful DJ.
Wow.
And he played at the Limelight in Montreal, which was like it was like Mecca for DJs and also for dancers, because it was 3 floors. First floor, gay leather bar. Be careful, the chaps have no ass in them. Okay. There are lots of motorcycles out front. First time I went there, I thought, oh, biker bar. Yeah, motorcycles out front and stuff like that. Guy gets off the bike, turns around. Whoa, hey, that's all ass. And that was the first floor. Second floor was public and pedestrian, and the normal people could go there off the street and tourists.
Yeah.
Third floor was where Robert was, broadcasting down to the other 2 floors and the third floor. He was up there in a booth where he used stage gear. He used like he had a sound system in there with the 24-track Yamaha console, 3 turntables. The setup was like the most superior DJ setup in the country, and the place was just rocking. It was gay, straight, strange, and so much fun. It was just ridiculous. And so that's what I would do. I would finish at midnight. I would go to the clubs. I worked at 1234. I was a mobile DJ in Montreal. I was a journalist. In Montreal, I had much more work than I had in Toronto, and I've always loved it. And Montreal is where I came from. So basically, when I came down to do much music, I brought all of that with me. And I lived in Montreal for about 1.5 years to 2 years for my first 2 years of much music. So I would come down, work for 4 or 5 days, go back to Montreal for 4 or 5 days, and so I'd have a pied de terre that I would stay at a friend's house, Zoe Stotland, and who was the person who actually introduced me to my manager that got me at Much Music, Catherine McCartney, who worked with and managed John Candy and Al Waxman. And I said, they make a lot more money than I do. So yeah, talk to me, and, so that was kind of it, I mean, that very first day I do walk in and I do Run DMC. We got the video on Rockbox. Great. Let's go. And then Lou Reed walked in, and, his best friend is a good friend of mine, Garland Jeffries, and a good friend of Montreal's. He's like, last time Garland performed in Montreal, there were 100,000 people in the street. And his legendary song for Montrealers would be Spanish Town off the Ghostwriter album. If you don't have the Ghostwriter album, get that in your collection forthwith, and everything that you can. But start with Ghostwriter and Wild in the Streets and all that, and from there you'll be quite happy. So he was Lou's best friend, and Lou was in a bad mood. You don't want Lou Reed in a bad mood. You know what I mean? You could get shot, you could get stabbed, you could get beat up. He looks at you and you just go, "Oh, hey, who turned the sun on?" Right? And I whispered in his ear. I said, "Hey, how's Garland?" He says, "You know Garland Jeffries?" And I said, "Yeah, I know Garland. We're real good friends." At that point, we were cool, and I realized New York and New York. Run DMC,
Mm.
Lou Reed, this is the spirit of New York. And it was also the breadth of music that I wanted to cover, even though I cover more with jazz and classical and whatever else, and Quebecois music and country. And if it's music, I do it. I don't have a problem with it. And if I can feel it, I can play it as well, or produce it or work with it. I like the authenticity of music, and I go for that. I go for that. If I'm recreating it, if I can make the creators proud with what I've done, then I'm happy. You know, if I can interpret their feeling correctly and they're mine. So I said, well, Lou, do you know Run DMC? Do you know Lou? No. Hollis, Queens, meet Brooklyn, you know, or downtown New York.
And did you
the
do this
Godfather.
did you do this like on TV? Like, did you get them both on at the same time?
I'm not
that
sure
would have been a cool conversation.
I'm not sure if there's footage on this. I did it right. There were cameras around.
Yeah.
I was too busy. I had just finished Run DMC. They came over. I brought them over. I'm not sure if that part is on camera. I would imagine that somebody would have went, hey, this is cool. But people barely knew Run DMC at the time.
Okay.
They all knew Lou Reed. I think he had come back and we had done some stuff with him. We did a live concert with him later on. But I'm not sure if that part is on camera. So you got me telling you about it, and that's got to be good.
That's good stuff.
Perfect. I have a question for you, Michael. I think so. There's a band that I'm a massive fan of, and they played a show opening for somebody in Toronto. First time I saw them, was not expecting what I saw. And the next time they came to town, and I think you were at the show because it was all industry, all musicians. It was at the Siboney. Remember the Siboney in Kensington? You remember?
Ooh, the Siboney at Kingston. No, I don't remember that.
Kensington Market. No, in Kensington Market.
Yeah. I know
Siboney.
Kensington Market. I've never been to the Siboney, though, I don't think.
It was Living Colour's first headlining show in Toronto. Maybe you weren't there. I thought you were. I mean,
I was
Getty and Alex. Like it was a either a musician or a who's who or an industry night.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I wanted to ask was, you know, your thoughts, your views on Living Colour. And I know you mentioned earlier that people always ask about Black music history, but just like, I'd love for you to share some thoughts before we finish.
Well, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, I've been working in music for about 40 some odd years or more. It began for me when I was a kid. So, but really when I was a kid, we're talking, you know, as Eddie Money would say, when the DJ said there was more music coming your way, I was the kid with the flashlight, the comic books under the cover. And when the DJ said there was more music coming your way, I always waited.
Yeah.
You know, and so, the DJ was the law when I was a kid, and the DJs were the first rappers when I was a kid, like especially listening to black radio coming out of Cleveland, Ohio, WJMO, WABQ, then rock and roll radio, WNCR. It was all a part of us. By the way, they have Bob Marley Day in Toronto, which I was like, when's Oscar Peterson Day? And in Cleveland, Ohio, okay, hang on a second. In Cleveland, Ohio, we have Rush Day.
Wow.
We have Rush Day. We've had Rush Day for a while. And I grew up with Rush, you know, so my high school leaving song was, hey, babe, it's 7:45. I think I'm in the mood, you know? So, it was kind of like that. And so rock and roll was never a foreign entity to me, or most black people, because when wasn't rock and roll a black invention? I'm not sure. You know, the same thing with with country pretty much, and other forms of American music. So, it wasn't, I mean, in my first band, we were playing Vehicle by the Ides of March and Black Sabbath, you know, as well, you know, we didn't need to be told to play James Brown. We knew how to play that. You know, we were trying to figure out how to play Papa Was a Rolling Stone and those things. And I was around the world. I grew up inside the world of music, you know. So Living Colour wasn't a a big deal in terms of them being black and playing rock and roll at all to me. It was for everybody else, and all those musicians were there to see an incredible band, led by Vernon Reed and Corey Glover. Muzz was in the band, and Will was in the band. Will Calhoun is one of my best friends from high school, Michael Calhoun. It's his cousin. Michael Calhoun went to the Daz band, but we used to cut classes and play music together. Living Color, they're friends, they're family. I remember the first time I met them wasn't at that gig at the Siboney, actually. They did play the Bamboo Club once, and they had a different singer at that time as well. And the singer that they had was just, his name escapes me now, but he's passed. And he was just a wonderful, just a great, great singer, but I don't think it fit with the band. And they obviously switched singers and got the right singer, because Corey was just voted by Rolling Stone one of the top rock and roll vocalists of life, which was great, which puts him in there with Robert Plant and everybody else, which is really good. There are a few other vocalists that deserve to be in there, but Corey, well, he's just a killer. Just great. They are all superior musicians. They all have worked in multiple music forms. Now with Doug Wimbish on bass from the Sugar Hill Studio Band and Tackhead and all of those things, and Jamaluddin Takuma and James Blood Ulmer, those guys. Just great. There was a great core of musicians that came out of New York that Kid Creole was a part of, and then there was this whole sort of jazz funk thing that came up, and Vernon got to play in Ronald Jackson Decoding Society. So these guys are loaded for bear anytime they go. They're really loaded for elephant every time they go out. They don't come and get ready. They are ready. They're superior musicians of any style and of any form. And I work with them every chance and every opportunity that I get. Just the greatest band in the world, I think. And they're working on a new album. They're touring currently with Extreme.
Yes.
They're on their way to Australia. If they haven't been yet, I think they're on their way. They're just finishing up in the western part of the US. Great band. It's where I go to for inspiration every once in a while, and to be able to work with them and to be able to bring them to people at Much Music was great. First time I saw them, they were opening up for Robert Palmer.
That's the show I was talking about. That's exactly what I said. I didn't want to give it away by saying it was the Palmer show.
Okay, it was Robert Palmer.
Yes.
And nobody was there to see them.
No.
And everybody was dressed in a suit and a tie, and the girls had on the little black dresses.
My girlfriend and my Jeff, who I was talking earlier about, Erica, and his girlfriend, we were at the bar because we read something, and I'm going to leave the journalist out, his name, but from the Toronto Sun, you can figure out who it is. Said stupid Jimi Hendrix ripoff cover band or whatever it was. And we're like, oh, okay. We were out having a drink. We're out having a drink, and Jeff and I we had front row seats for the show. And Jeff and I were like, what the check, please? And we went in, and I got goosebumps, man. We were just like, my life changed that night.
A lot of things changed that night. So after the show, after their 45 minutes, I worked my way around to the dressing room, and I opened the door of the dressing room, and it looked like somebody had come in, and it looked like Bambi versus Godzilla, and your puppy and your deer had just been killed. The guys were just not happy. Really, it looked like somebody stole their puppy and killed it and hung it in the dressing room. That's what it looked like. Their faces was just like, oh man, they weren't really like, oh Jesus. And I stuck my head, and I stuck my head in the door, and I said, guys, they weren't here for you. They were here for Robert, and they were here for little black dresses and cocktails and stuff like this. And because that whole thing of Addicted to Love really just kind of, it became a fashion statement at each and every show. And I said, but I was here for you. My name is Michael Williams. I work at Much Music. Here's my business card. Come see me tomorrow, right, at Much Music, and we're going to have some fun. Okay. They came by, Corey came by, and I gave him, some Canadian music on the way out. And on my desk was the Dalbello CD.
Yeah, Lisa. Yeah.
I gave him Lisa Dalbello.
Yeah.
And to this day, they want Lisa Dalbello. Every time they're in town, we call her and say, the band wants to work with you. The band loves you. They want you to write some songs with them and sing on the album anytime you feel like it, you know? And she has yet to respond. And I got to spend some wonderful time with her. I love her to death. She's like one of the artists from Toronto that we in Montreal looked at and said, yeah. Come on, Mick Ronson, David Bowie, that whole connection, that sound, that Peter Gabriel thing that she was doing. And she is still and has always been a wonderful songwriter. Here's a point that will be in the book. Michael Calhoun, Will Calhoun's cousin, in the Daz band. We went to school together. The Daz band was originally called Kinsman Daz because it was Kinsman Street and they were like the Kinsman something band, right? Whatever. And so on their first album, they recorded a song by Lisa Dalbello called Never, I'll Never Stand in Your Way. And she had never heard it. So I got a copy of it. I gave it to her and I talked to the band about it and they were like, oh yeah, great song. Great. And it is. Their version of the song is like, whoo! It's like Earth, Wind and Fire does Lisa Dalbello and it's a superior product produced by one of the producers of Earth, Wind and Fire. Their second album, Verdine and I think it was Verdine, Maurice White's brother and the keyboard player of Earth, Wind and Fire at the time. I think Larry Dunn. They produced the second Kinsman Daz band album. But there was that Canadian connection, and there's been this strong Canadian connection through my life. And it's only when I look at it, I think, oh, yeah, and I wound up here in Canada. This is great. Nice. So musically, there's been a strong connection. Cleveland, Ohio is kind of the musical sister city of Montreal. So Peter Gabriel, Pink Floyd, Genesis, but the big band for both of us, Babe Ruth, the Mexican. Babe Ruth used to play bars in Cleveland and they used to play concerts in Montreal. And of course, Genesis back in the early days of Foxtrot and Nursery Crimes. I went to school. We all wanted to play this stuff. We all learned how to play this stuff or attempted to. And sonically, it influenced us huge. Yeah, huge, just huge.
My favorite story. I don't know how much time you have for it, but I got it. So my favorite Cleveland story. I was in roofing. My kids were just born, early '90s kind of thing, mid '90s. The company was out of Cleveland. I worked with all these guys from across the U.S. You know, I'm not your typical roofing guy in sales, but you know, and I'm flipping through the paper. And I see this ad for a bar. It's like a bar, kind of like the Opera House kind of thing, right? And I'm like, Fishbone. I get on the phone, I call him up. I'm like, is this like Fishbone? It's not like just like a Fishbone cover band. No, it's Fishbone. So we all go down to the flats, and I go into this bar. I go into whatever the bar is. It's on the east side of the flats, right? And my buds go off, and they're drinking. I look at the biggest guy. As soon as Fishbone hits the stage, I look at the biggest guy. I go tap him on the shoulder. I'm like. And he's like, yeah, sure. So he throws me up. I spend the whole time up there. I walk out of the show. My clothes are ripped. I'm bloody. I'm bruised. I'm everything. And again, you know what it's like at the end of the night, flats, everything piles out onto the street, right? My buds just coincidentally, I happened to bump into them because I figured I was catching a cab myself back to the hotel we were staying at. And they look at me and all these big roofing guys. They're like, who the fuck did this to you? We're going to fucking kill them. I'm like, no, man, I had a blast. And like, what do you mean you had a blast? I was at the Fishbone show. I was surfing the crowd the whole time. I hit the floor how many times? And they're like, you thought that was fun? I'm like, yeah. After that, they thought Canadians were crazy.
Hey, and the flats, because people won't really know what the flats are. The flats is the area, the industrial area. So when you leave downtown, you go down by the water, the Cuyahoga River, where all the steel and stuff comes in. So it's where all the boats pull in. They get loaded or unloaded with all the ore coming from Pennsylvania. It's kind of smelly down there. It's kind of dirty. It's kind of nasty. But what we did in Cleveland, we went to the smelly, dirty, and nasty, and we made it fun. And so they built clubs and stuff down there. And it's a little bit like Montreal. If they throw you out of a club in the flats, you land in another club with a drink in your hand already, and they've already taken the price of admission out of your pocket. That's the flats, baby. And at a Fishbone show, geez, I'm surprised you didn't go to the Agora. I went to the Agora, which was the old Allen Theater, which is where WMMS used to be, the station that was a 50-year running, prize-winning rock and roll station of the year for Rolling Stone magazine. It was the perfect station. It was like where Kid Leo on Friday would say on the rock and roll station, because rock and roll meant what they said. It just wasn't white. It wasn't black. It was everything that rocked and everything that rolled. Soul music all included, Coltrane every once in a while. That's the type of radio station that we had. And then we had jazz stations, but we had two rock stations. One was progressive rock and the other one was more street rock. And that was WMMS, which was above the Agora at the Allen Theater. And the original Agora was it was the rock and roll club, of a lifetime. Like I saw Rory Gallagher, I saw Peter Frampton there, and with 500 people, and we're all sitting on the floor. He had just left Humble Pie. Trapeze, Chick Corea's Return to Forever, Weather Report, and you would get you would have Trapeze opening and Weather Report or Return to Forever finishing. There was always that mixture of musical styles, like what Bill Graham used to do at the Forum. Not the Forum, but the Fillmore in New York and LA. So there was always the cross-pollination. So the same kids that listened to Rush, people that look like me, also listened to Weather Report, Frank Zappa, Black Sabbath, and also wanted to play all that music as well, and might have a penchant for Virgil Fox, because that was how the whole thing started back when rock and roll was free and the formats didn't control things. And one station, other words, you have a chain of stations and they program it out of Toronto, and all the stations across the country play the same thing. No, it wasn't like that at Shom FM. Shom FM was owned by the great Jeff Sterling, God rest his soul, and a wonderful man. And he was independent, as independent could be, man. He's the guy that brought you Captain Canada, and he was just a wonderful guy. And Shom was the type of station where he would walk in with his guru and say, I'm here with my guru, and I'd like you to put the microphones outside and record the dawn and play it for the listeners. Okay. And it was that type, but it also brought the two solitudes of English and French together. And when I first came to Canada, the very first time in 1972, to visit a friend and check out school, because Marshall McLuhan was going to be the head of the communications department before he died. That was the rumor. And so I was going to check it out. And it was fabulous. Montreal was just great. The music was wonderful. The people were great. It was a microcosm of the world. So all the prejudices and all that sort of stuff kind of went with it. But in Montreal, it had a different flavor. It had a different feel. And if you could get to Montreal as an island, if you could get to shore, you were okay. And if you didn't run afoul of the bikers and the gangsters, you're pretty good. I worked with most of those folks, so I was pretty good, man. And everything was gay, straight, strange, and wonderful there. And when I came down to Toronto to do much music, it was very different. Toronto's a very different, not much of a forgiving place, and not nearly as fun as Montreal. But the people in that building reminded me of Montreal, and that's why I stayed, and that's why I worked there.
Nice. The one last question for you, Michael.
I'm good to go, man. I mean, well, listen, your thing probably cuts off in a minute or two. So.
Maybe, hopefully not. We've paid the bill, I think. But the doc is called 299 Queen Street West. Check out 299queenstreetwest.com. There's a dozen plus dates. This documentary
13 dates across the country, 13 dates across Canada. You can buy your tickets now on the website. Absolutely. We will all be going, whoever can and will and wants to go out and meet crowds. I'm going out to say thank you. Nice. And it's a precursor to my Thank You Canada tour, which I'm hoping to do with Living Color. We're working on some tours to get Living Color to do a tour across Canada and do something real special where we can do an educational thing as well as a concert thing and an all request concert thing. And we're trying to do residencies across the country. So, you know, and we want to kind of do it in a way where we can hang out and teach the music that we play, that they play, and give some fellowship. It's very important for musicians to have fellowship with other musicians. So we're trying to do that as well as do an acoustic show and, you know, kind of drive across Canada and, you know, and go from Newfoundland to Victoria, hopefully, and give a chance for people to see the band that they've never seen. And if you've never seen Living Color, they're out, like I say, they're out with Extreme right now, and that's a great package. But Living Color on their own are just absolutely fabulous. But we'll be out, and worst comes to worst, I might be DJing at some of these things or after parties or stuff like that. I'm the official opening act for the Spoons. I go out and I DJ for about 2 hours before them, and normally to a standing ovation, and that's a lot of fun because I get to play a lot of different music. And it's a great time, man. It's a great time, and I think this is going to be an interesting thing. I haven't seen the film, but I'm very excited. I actually want to walk into the theater like with everybody else and see myself on a big, big screen. I've never had the privilege or the honor to do that, and this is quite a privilege and an honor to be in the film, as much as it was a privilege and an honor working at Much Music and having influence, a positive influence, hopefully, on 3 generations of Canadians and music fans and stuff like that. I hope to be getting back to radio, but I'll only do that if I can play the music that I need to and want to do, and that people would expect me to play too. I'm looking at sort of like a midnight thing, you know, sort of a midnight to 6 thing across the country. We're talking to everybody, see if we can put it together. It'd be fairly dangerous because, like I say, when I go into the room, it's spontaneous combustion. I don't want to know what I'm going to do. I just want to have the music at my fingertips and go for it, you know?
It's like old Spirit of the Radio days.
Yeah, well,
but I mean, just the freedom is what I'm talking
the
about.
freedom. Yeah. I mean, and the freedom that they used to have at Shom FM in Montreal as well, you know, and a lot of stations before it all became formatted. And I've been out making music. I did some tracks with Herb Alpert and Sly and Robbie, and that's out there now. My name is on the Cirque du Soleil album, Alegria. I produced the Nylons. I co-produced the Nylons with my partner, Brad Ralph. And I produce some music every once in a while. Most people don't know that I produce, engineer, or play. And that's great because then people don't ask me to do things that I have absolutely no interest in doing. The music, I have to love it to get involved. I've got to love the people doing it. I have to almost want to be able to do it for free, but I don't. You know,
Fair enough.
I have to love it that much. And the film, I'm really, really excited. And I mean, it's kind of like a love letter and a postcard to Canada saying thank you, you know, because not a lot of people really recognized what Much Music was and what we did in terms of putting a face to music in Canada. And I think what we did at Much Music not only changed music in Canada and the ability of who could make music, bringing everybody up, but it also helped to change music in the world. I think by showing Canadian music in a different light and Canadian performers in a different light, and showing that there was more than Anne Murray, there was more than the great, incredible Gordon Lightfoot. I mean, most people don't know Rick James was here. You know, I mean, Oscar Peterson, Rick James, Anne Murray, Gordon Lightfoot, Neil Young, and a multitude of other Canadian performers, including Murray McLaughlin, hightailed it to the States because they had to. Well, with Much Music, you could start here. Yeah. You could start with us, and you can start here. And all you had to do was make it there. And all of the glory and all of that goes to Moses Neimer, who was the green light. John Martin and Nancy Oliver, who created the new music and Much Music was a direct outgrowth of the New Music, and it was the New Music was a fantastic music journalist show that a lot of great people went through, and Much Music was being the outgrowth of that, just came bigger and bigger, and we had some great people on it. I don't know what happened too much after when I left, but I know when I was there and I was I was the first person that they hired outside of Toronto, and we did some great shit. We did some absolutely outstanding great stuff. And in terms of journalists, in terms of, how would you say, the mise en scene, or the look and the feel of it.
Yeah.
So
It was a culture.
in terms of, it was a culture unto its own that started with City TV, and I was always a fan of City TV. I always watched City TV when I came down from university. I would watch City TV till the late hours of the night with Chuck the security guard and all that sort of stuff, and it was wonderful to do that. And everybody from Christopher to Rick the Temp had their own vibe and their own thing, and I had my own vibe and my own thing, which was music, and so I basically did what I did at Showm FM. I did it, and instead of having a microphone, instead of having two turntables and a microphone, I had two cameras and a microphone, and I didn't do anything different. I loved it. And unfortunately, there is nothing like it now that has the balls that it had, to grab it by the neck and dive without a net, leap without a net, and don't worry about where you're going to go, because you're going to land and somebody's going to catch you, and it's going to be okay. And you have this common team working for a common goal for quite some time. When John Martin left, though, I think the heart and soul, when John Martin and Nancy left, the heart and soul of the building left, and it changed into something else. Not that it shouldn't have, but it absolutely did. And I don't know if anything like that could be done now, but it seems like it couldn't be done, but it could be done. Access TV is the closest thing to something like Much Music now. But in terms of music television, people don't put a lot of stock in it. They've been using music like mortar for bricks. Music. Oh, let's do a music festival. Let's do this. Let's do that. And people forget the first time that I remember music being used for a cause was Operation Breadbasket around late 60s, mid 60s, like 68, 69. That was fueled by Jesse Jackson, Cannonball Adderley, and his quintet, and Joe Zawinul, who wrote Mercy Mercy and was a member of Cannonball Adderley's quintet, and later Weather Report, which gave you Birdland and all that stuff. He had written a song called Country Preacher, and the album was called Country Preacher, and that was about Jesse Jackson, and that was the first time I remember music being used for a cause. And so that's where it began in my neighborhood, or in my neck of the woods, or Chicago, Cleveland, and Black America. And so music was also used in the civil rights movement to keep people going and stuff like that. So music has always been there, I think, but we actually put it out. We put Canadian music out there. We didn't compare it with the rest of the world. We put it on its own pedestal and its own platform. And we were very important, I think, to what has become Canadian music, from everything from Drake to Celine to you name it. We had some sort of part either in inspiring it, showing it, putting a name and a face to it, honoring it, praising it, and loving it just because it was ours.
Michael, it has been an honor having you on. I cannot wait for the book to come out to have you on here again, but I can't wait until less than a month from now, September the 22nd.
22nd, it starts in Toronto.
In Toronto. Gregg and I will be there. And we're going to come up to you and grab a photo and chat some more if you've got the time.
Well, all right. And I'll end this with, this is a buddy of mine, A-Train Boynton. This is one of the tracks from my box set that's coming out. It's sort of like stuff that I've worked on, stuff that I've had something to do with, stuff that I've touched, goosed, and stuff that I just love from friends. And this takes me back because I started I started in Montreal, but the first place that I got paid to do any music work other than DJing was in Vancouver at a place called Quintessence Records. And there were bands like the Payolas and the Pointed Sticks. I was the Pointed Sticks road manager, tour manager. And I worked the album Perfect Youth, but I also worked everything else that was there. And one of the bands that was there was the Payolas. A-Train Boynton was their final bass player, I think, in the Payolas. He did a cover. I think you'll know it.
Touch you to see if you're real. Is it nothing to something I feel? Let my heart take the strain, or will it break down again? In your lips I sense danger. You've got the eyes of a stranger. How I've been sleeping for all these years. It's the magic that makes you appear. In the room, feel my heart race. I knew I'd been fooled when I looked in your face. In your lips I sense danger. You've got the eyes of a stranger. In your lips I see danger. You've got the eyes of a stranger. Sense, baby, in your lips I sense, baby, danger in your eyes. In your lips I sense, baby, in your eyes I sense it, baby. Stranger in your eyes. Have I been sleeping for all these years? Is it magic that makes you in the room? I felt my heart race. I knew I'd been fooled when I looked in your face.
That was
This is
awesome.
it.
Honestly, there's like we have to do part 2 or the book when the book comes out or whatever.
Sure.
Like when you were talking stuff I'm thinking about is like my last show I actually ever played like professionally live was with Cree Summers up at the top of X-Rays.
Okay.
We've had Sate on previously. I don't know if Jive was at Show'em back when you. Anyway, I just like.
Yeah.
I have so many questions, but we'll save it for
well,
another
it'll sure, man. I mean, because there's a lot of most people thought I was just this weird sort that I was an alien, which I am. So I'll claim that I am an alien. And so they kind of treated me as such, where did this guy come from? What's he talking about? Like whatever. And then eventually it all made sense. And the ones that figured it out, I've been touring Western Canada for like about the last 5, 6 years, 7 years. And I go out and I host festivals out there. I have my own festival in Slocan that I curate called the Slocan International Music and Art Festival. In June, it begins the festival season out there. And everybody has been so incredibly wonderful and nice and kind and big fans of music, more so than what radio allows them to hear. And so I want to do something now to service those folks who are the music fans. And the reason why I don't release music under my name or the names of the people that I work with, I let them do that, but I don't want to compete. I want the music to go to people that'll enjoy it and want to hear it because I did it, or I had something to do with it. So it's a whole different thing for me. And it's time to now with the film and stuff like that, it's kind of time to get back to work and to do some music things that aren't being done and haven't been done since I stopped doing them. So, but now we get to do them in a different way, in a different space, in a different time. And the internet was foretold. I knew all about all of this stuff a long time ago, but now it's at the point where I have a gimbal, this is on a gimbal, and and the software lets me move around and all that sort of stuff. And so you have a lot more control as the individual. And that's what I loved about people always say, what was your favorite job? Much music must have been your favorite job. I went, no, it wasn't. My favorite job was working at Show'em FM and CKGM. Why? It was just me. It was all me. It was me controlling everything. What you heard, how you heard it, all the effects. I was the DJ. I was everything. So it would literally be spontaneous combustion. And so and if I go out and DJ, that's kind of like, that's more the way that it is. So you never know what you're going to hear. So I think the radio should have that too, and it doesn't. So we're going to try and bring that back and let people hear some things that they should hear. Some of the rock and roll that made rock and roll classics, some of the music that you're just not going to hear. And if you never heard a great song, well, how can you write one?
Interesting.
Exactly.
So we're more interested in the songwriters, the people learning how to play the music properly from the people who created the music, the respect for the music, and spreading it so that, everybody wants to be a part of it. And that's it. That's it. We do more of the same, man. We do more of the same.
Well, listen,
Thank you
Michael,
very much, fellas.
Yes,
thanks for your time. Have a great evening. Enjoy the rest of summer. We'll see you in a month.
Yeah, man. In about a month. Okay. Thank you.
Everybody, take care.
Thanks, Michael.
All right.
Cheers, mate.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers.